Welcome to Five Things. This is Erik McKinney, joined by Marc Kulkin and Greg Katz, as always, after USC games. This time, guys, we're talking about a USC 45-14 win. Boy, it didn't look like that. We were going to be talking about a win early on as Washington State jumps out to that 14-0 lead. But USC able to come all the way back. Let's hop into our first thing. Marc, we'll start with you. As always, first thing, your player of the game.
Oh, wow. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with this. You got to go with Jackson Dart. I mean, to step in the way he did. Now, we should let people know there were packages ready for him in this game. They weren't ready to put him in when they did, but when he stepped in, took him a little while to get warmed up. But at the end of the day, what were the final yardage totals, Erik? 390 yards,
391. 391 for Dart, which again set a USC record for most passing yards in a debut.
4 touchdowns and shades of Sam Darnold floating through our minds.
Greg, go ahead. Your player of the game.
I have to painfully say that I also agree with Mr. Kulkin there. I don't know. I thought I was having a dream, actually. I wasn't sure if I was watching the reincarnation of Sam Darnold or a little bit of Carson Palmer at the same time. But I will tell you this, he is unbelievable. I mean, forget about Washington State. Okay, Keaton probably could have had a good game too if he would have survived the Pinata experience. But bottom line is wow, I just thought that Dart really made a statement. In fact, one of the things I'm writing for tonight was if Clay Helton was a change for the future, Jackson Dart might be a change for the present. Yeah. And I think that Jackson Dart, it wasn't that he was good. He was really good. And the point was, to me, is I don't care about the interceptions. We've seen that with guys who are far more experienced. To keep his poise like that after he got racked up and was walking around with a limp, and he didn't wimp out, and he sucked it up. Boy, he was getting better and better and better as that game went on. I think he could have thrown for 900 yards if the game went 8 quarters.
Yeah, before Erik takes over, I turned to him, I said, Erik, this reminds me exactly of Sam Darnold's first road game. Interception, fumble, trying to do a little bit too much, but you could just see the abilities out there. Go ahead, Erik, I'm sorry.
Brett Nealon after the game. He's Sam Darnold. Reminds me of Sam Darnold. Looks like Sam Darnold. Plays like Sam. I mean, all of that. Like it's the name that gets brought up. And look, if we're picking a player of the game, you guys are right. It's Jackson Dart. I, of course, having to go third. I'm going to cheat again, like always. I'm going to say the USC defense. Look, that was not a great start. I'm going to give it to all of them. Everybody who played. 3 sacks on the day, including Drake Jackson's, sack fumble in the end zone. Tui Pelotu gets the fumble recovery for a touchdown. Kalen Bullock with a really great interception. Jaden Williams with an interception. Jalen Smith with a sack. Kanai Maga with a sack. And for a long stretch, I mean, you're talking about just numbers you don't believe from the Washington State offense. Based on how they started, I mean, you're talking about negative 2 yards in the third quarter, 3 turnovers, -2 yards in the third quarter, the way USC came out defensively. It was an unbelievable, the entire game, really. The USC defense, I think, took charge of it, but just the most unbelievable 180 that I've seen inside a game with how much momentum was going one way, stopped completely, and just crushed back all the way the other way for the rest of the game. And I think the defense should get a ton of credit for that. And they said they never felt like, oh my gosh, we don't know what we're going to do. They felt, offense and defense, when it was 14-0 early, both guys from both units said, no, we felt like it was going to happen and we were going to get there. And Dante Williams said it was just a matter of them to getting over the need to press, to want to make all the biggest plays early on and playing outside of themselves. And once they settled in, Drake Jackson said that, once we settle in and play like that, we feel like we can stop anybody. So again, cheating, going with the entire defense.
Well, and I'm not a stat guy, but to kind of put an exclamation point on your point, Erik, Washington State had 10 offensive possessions in the second half. They had 0 net yards on their first 7 possessions. They finished with 82 yards in the second half, all in the last 3 possessions.
it was towards the end of the second half, it was like somebody went in to the video game and put all the sliders down to easy for the USC defense. It all clicked. They had answers. Where it looked like they had no answers early, they figured them all out over the end of the second quarter, really into the second half. Let's go play of the game. Greg, we'll start with you. Your play of the game, our second thing.
No brainer, the 38-yard touchdown pass to Gary Bryant Jr. It changed the momentum of the whole thing to me. What it did for Jackson Dart was probably immeasurable. What it did for Gary Bryant is he probably felt the most comfortable he has felt since he entered college. I think it kind of saved USC from really going into halftime wondering what's happening now. I would like to just hit upon one of the things play of the game was probably one that wasn't really noticed. It's when Jaden DeLoria went out of the game. To me, it was no coincidence that the SC defense played way better when he was gone, and they had Victor at quarterback there. That's not to take away from the defense. I thought their effort was magnificent in the second half. They played with great emotion, but I'll save another one of my comments to when we get to surprises. So that's mine, 38-yard pass.
Go ahead, Mark, your play of the game.
I got to go with that goal line stand. That to me was the turning point of the game. Yeah, the touchdown to GB was huge, but I think that fourth down goal line stance, they bowed up and Washington State was done. From that point forward, they knew we're not going to score on this team again. It was over.
I'm going to say right at the start of the third quarter, Micah Kroom comes down and forces that fumble on the kickoff. USC gets that short field. They score again. All of a sudden, it's 14-14, and the avalanche. It just was piling on from that point forward. I think, Greg, the Gary Bryant touchdown at USC absolutely needed at that time. That's a fourth down play. If they don't get that, you're walking into the locker room, and that is a tough turnaround to get shut out in the first half and really have no spark, offensively at that point. But I think both of those, getting those on either side of halftime, and the players all after the game talked about Dante Williams delivered a motivating halftime speech, and knowing Dante and how much this meant, his first game as head coach, that's easy to see that the guys came out with a fire lit under them.
Make sure you watch the video interviews, because the players really address that each in their own way.
Mark, let's go. Our third thing, and this is always the surprise. What you were surprised at seeing, maybe that you didn't expect coming into the game.
Going down 14-0. It's hard for me to pick a surprise right now because of the euphoria that I'm feeling. I mean, Dante, even after the game, invited the media in to give him, to give the team a, we're all in chant. So I'm kind of caught up in it a little bit. I guess the surprise was the way how flat they started the game. Dante's coming in, he's your new head coach, you're excited to play for him, but it looked like Clay Helton hangover. And I don't know, something happened, switch flipped, and boom, it looked like not to take anything away from Dante, but that looked like a Pete Carroll team out there, particularly in the second half. Whatever adjustments were made, it worked.
Greg, go ahead, hop in.
I don't know. We're on surprises, right?
Yeah.
Is that we're on? Okay. I was surprised, actually. Actually, I was very happy, not surprised, but I was still surprised that they finally put Drake Jackson on the edge, and he became a factor. I think it took him 8 quarters to figure out what I think a lot of people have already figured out, that you put him in space to play defense pass-wise. He's a non-factor. You're taking him out of the game. He's in between the lines. And I think he made that factor. I think he got excited too. I think the whole team got excited, and you can see his body language. I was surprised the SC was actually able to compose itself after the beginning. That I think they were really in a malaise. I think they really, I don't blame Dante Williams about what happened in the first quarter. But it just goes to show you what a change of mindset can do, because it's all between the ears. And, I'm not one, as I coached for a long, long time. And you know what? You could only do so much at halftime. And I think what Dante Williams did at halftime was just ream his team and not get into X's and O's. I mean, you go to practice, it takes 2 hours to get something through somebody's head and probably 4 days to do it. You're not going to do it in 15 to 20 minutes of halftime. So he probably read them the riot act, and they probably had not seen that. I don't think Clay Helton quite probably put it in the same way that Dante Williams does, but I can guarantee you that he put it in a way that all those players understood it. And that really plays to his strength. That's why he relates to the players. He talks their language, so to speak, and they get it. But I also think that play of the game, in my opinion, the pass play got their attention. Dante nailed it when he got in that halftime and said, okay, who are we? And I think they stopped feeling sorry for themselves. I don't know if that's the right word, but instead of looking behind, I think they started looking ahead. And they proved it. Give them all the credit in the world for that.
Yeah, I'll go my surprise, and I would not have said this, coming into the year. I'm surprised that the run game sort of was what it was. I thought what we saw against San Jose State, what we saw against Stanford, that there was something there, but 48, and this was a Washington State team last year that, remember, held USC to 5 rushing yards. And yes, some extenuating circumstances there with starters out and true freshmen needing to fill in, but boy, this is 2 years in a row now where Washington State feels like they kind of got USC's number on the ground. One of a few teams that I think can say that. But, Jackson Dart leads the team with 32 yards rushing. Vavae Malape, 9 yards on 9 attempts, just could not ever get it going. Again, I'm sure Graham Harrell will say, we threw for almost 400 and put up 45 points or, 38 offensive points and got it done through the air. I feel like they ran enough times to where, hit a couple on the ground, but again, plays getting kind of strung out and not a lot of space. So again, it's not something where it's like, oh my gosh, the offense is in shambles and they can't figure it out, but was a little surprised that it felt like a step back after, again, what we had seen those first 2 games. Mark,
I was just going to say, even though they weren't able to run it effectively, they were still able to balance the offense using the run game. And I think that's what helped a lot. So that's all I was in touch on.
And it's also that, first glimpses in a while of a quarterback that can get it done on the ground. I mean, Jackson Dart obviously hobbled early in his outing with going down hard on the knee, wearing that sleeve the rest of the game, but able to tough it out. The guys afterward, not surprised at all that he kept going and kept pushing and had the game that he did, even though it looked like, oh my gosh, are we going to quarterback number 3 early in the game at this point when he went down. Mark, go ahead. Your expectation that delivered, what you expected to see and it was out there on the field for you.
I expected a big win. It didn't look that way in the beginning, but you know what? I called it. No. They looked like they should. Look, take away the first half. That second half is, I think, what we all anticipated this team to look like this year. They should have looked like this coming out of the gate against San Jose State. We saw what happened last week. So for them to bounce back, like Greg said, it took them a while to shake off the malaise, but to finish the way they did, that's a great takeaway. To do what they did on the road, and Pullman's not an easy place to play. It's not Oregon State, where USC tends to have a more difficult time, but coming up here to this little corner of the earth and leaving with a nice 45-14 win, considering all the circumstances, what they've been through this past week, I'll take it every day, twice on Sunday.
Greg, go ahead with yours.
My surprise?
No, what you anticipated to see and it played out, it delivered during the game.
No, I anticipated to see the running game do exactly what it did today. I have no illusions about where the emphasis is, the talent is. I think other teams are going to look at this film that Washington State did and see how did they managed to stuff them. I just think that, I'll tell you what, when I saw Jackson Dart run the first time, I said, now that's a key part of the offense if he's healthy. I said, this guy can really change the course of a game. And what he really did was get the respect of his teammates, because when you say he reminds you of Sam Darnold was like a man's man out there. I mean, he was like a linebacker mentality, and Jackson Dart reminded me of the same thing. But I'll say this, this running game thing, if they don't get it fixed or get the offensive line fixed, we already saw, no matter how maneuverable Jackson Dart is, he's still susceptible to injuries if they don't block for him. He's more maneuverable, obviously, than Keaton is. But really, if you're going to stand back and pass the ball close to 50 times a game, you got to give this guy some protection. I mean, if you're not going to it doesn't make any difference who the quarterback is. I mean, they're really exposed. And so I hope that'll be something that they will. I'm sure they try to address it. Don't get me wrong. I think they try to address it, but I think the players have to take it upon themselves too and say, look, you know what? The defense isn't got to be the one that gets all fired up. The offensive line's got to get fired up. And I think that there's definitely a emotional attitude difference between the two units, in my opinion.
Yeah, so what I expected and delivered, Drake London was going to have a bounce back game, and he goes 13 catches, 170 yards, 2 touchdowns, and sets career highs for catches and for yards. What I also expected, and we saw them, I'm going to combine sort of two things that you talked about. One of them, after that Jackson Dart run, that sideline was as fired up as it's been this season, and maybe multiple seasons. That certain players, certain quarterbacks have a way of making a play and guys gravitate toward it. They get fired up. And Jackson, this is purely a positive point for Jackson. And he has it. Jackson Dart, when he plays, people gravitate towards him. And so that was one of those. And then again, I expected the energy to be there. And Mark, like you said, it was not there early. I think we both thought this team's going to come out fired up and play hard. It wasn't there, but when it was going, when they got into it and it was going, yeah, the sideline looked like it was looking, more than a decade ago. When you're talking about that era that, again, you want to get back to. The guys were fired up. They were going, offense was playing for defense. Defense was playing for offense. Everybody's kind of involved and up and cheering and all that. And I expected there to be, Jackson Dart called this a roller coaster of a week, all the emotions that went through it and everything that everybody dealt with. But I think it was so cathartic for them to get out there, take a breath, play, and to get this result where they're not having to answer questions about the first half. They're able to sweep that away during the game and be able to talk about a huge win. That's something I think we all kind of thought, maybe they'd be able to rally and get this big win up here against Washington State. So good to see for the team, for the players. They needed this bus ride. They needed this plane ride. They needed this to be able to take a breath at the end of this long week. But all of a sudden, we're turning the page. Oregon State's up next. Let's look at this game, Greg, and your biggest takeaway moving forward from this game. I think we all might be on a very similar page here.
Well, my takeaway was I'm good. Washington State's not one of the better teams in the conference. Let's all admit that. We saw that when they even had to go to their backup quarterback. You saw, game over basically. But I think it was about the effort. It was the ability to forget about whether they're playing Oregon or they're playing Notre Dame. It was their effort, their turnaround that makes them know it's really between their ears. Now, going forward, I think it's going to be really fascinating to see what they're going to do with the quarterback situation. Keaton Slovis has been a great kid. Keaton Slovis is the all Pac-12 quarterback, there's a lot there. But Keaton Slovis, if he does have a concussion, okay, if that's what they say, and he goes on concussion protocol, has had a number of them now from my understanding. I might be wrong, but I think he has. And that's from a human condition. I have concerns about that for him. I also think that the team understands the difference between Keaton. They appreciate him, they like him, but they understand they want to win. And I think if Clay Helton was the coach at SC, I'm not so sure that Keaton Slovis wouldn't be the starting quarterback in the future, and he would go with him. But I think Dante Williams is going to see things differently than Clay Helton. I think it's a sensitive issue between Dante Williams and Graham Harrell. Now, Graham Harrell might have secretly in his mind said, you know what, this kid is pretty good. And, remember, let's not forget that Keaton Slovis became the starting quarterback at SC when JT Daniels got hurt. So it is part of the game, and he has to understand that. I think going forward, they're going to have to play the best quarterback that's going to put them in a position to win. Put them in a position where the players on the team have that feeling that he's the guy for us. And my feeling is take out all the tears and the Kleenex and all that sort of stuff. I think Jackson Dart is the man. I think if Keaton Slovis can't play next week and it's an automatic start for Dart, I don't think Dart will look back. I will say this, though, Oregon State will come to play. Oregon State will be a good test in a lot of ways. I think Oregon State's better than Washington State. And will be interesting to see how Oregon State defends Jackson Dart and how Jackson Dart reacts to being at home. Some guys, they feel no pressure when they're away. At home, he's going to have all his buddies and everybody's going to be looking at him. But I see nothing but good things, and hopefully turning the page. Trojans aren't, they're out of the national championship, but they're not out of winning the Pac-12. That's a dream that's still there. And I don't know with this team. It's very interesting to me.
Mark, go ahead. Spin it forward. Your takeaway from this game.
Yeah, I'll spin it. I think they're going to ride this wave of momentum. Hopefully it will carry over during practice this week. I'm glad I'm not in Dante's shoes because he does have a decision to make now. Assuming Keaton is healthy enough to play next week and practice this week, because that'll be the tell. If Keaton's not practicing this week, we'll know who's going to be the starting quarterback next Saturday at home. Is the team ready to rally around another quarterback? I want to savor this win. I don't want to get too far ahead because this team, I have never been able to get a feel for a team before, but this team, I'm still trying to figure them out because we see what they can do when their heads are screwed on straight and they play disciplined ball without turning it over in the second half, without creating stupid penalties. This is what you get. But we also see what happens when, they had a great week of practice and you get a result of last week. So going forward with this, I'm no more of I'm believing. It's more of you're going to show me on a week-to-week basis. Kind of like, win the day type of thing. Show me.
Yeah, the quarterback thing is immediately interesting, right? That is what is going to be discussed all week. I think there's a way that you can still play both. Again, talking about Keaton being healthy. If he's the starter, you absolutely. At this point, what Jackson Dart did is demand snaps in every game going forward. I don't think you can have a game at this point where Jackson Dart watches the entire game from the sideline. Do you balance that with Keaton Slovis? Do you let him run the show? Those are big questions. And Dante Williams was in no mood at the end of the game to start getting into that and hammering into that. It was, hey, we're going to see. We'll see how it goes. Competition everywhere. Keaton's going to be okay. That kind of thing. But boy, I don't know how you send Jackson back to the bench. And so balancing that and figuring that out is going to be huge. My takeaway outside of that is they saw what happens. Again, it's Washington State. It's the backup quarterback. It's everything. Yes, everything there is true. Dante Williams came in this week and he calls them enhancements there are some changes. There are some flat out changes to be, kind of speaking truth to that sort of stuff. The guys have seen now, hey, if we go along with that, this is the result. So pinning this result on those enhancements that they made throughout the week, I think is that positive reinforcement that they need to keep things going forward, to keep buying into that, to keep, following lockstep with Dante Williams, with the enhancements, with the changes, and seeing positive results from that. I think that is a big thing from winning this way on the road in your first week, capping this with Dante Williams. So again, plenty of games left to go. There's still, Notre Dame out there. There's still UCLA out there. There's still some games, Arizona State that's to come. But again, this first step under Dante Williams, behind Jackson Dart, with the defense kind of showing up, in a big way on Saturday. A lot of good news for USC after again, what Jackson Dart called a roller coaster of a week. So that caps our 5 things look from USC's 45-14 win against Washington State. For Greg Katz, Marc Kulkin, this is Erik McKinney. Thanks for watching WeAreSC.